Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics Football. This is going to be the Game Week 7 podcast with Sergios, who is now a rank 76 player in FPL, having a fantastic start this season. What do you kind of attribute to you having such a good start to the season so far?
Well, hello at first. I'm very happy to be here, and let's work it through from the start together to get it right.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think when we actually look at, your team and how it started, I think we can say it's roughly, I think, quite a template team because I think everyone had a very, very strong game week one. I guess the
Yeah, yeah.
difference is that you opted to go for both Benrahma and Rafinha. What was kind of the thinking behind that structure?
Well, of course, it's a template team. When I started planning on my team, I had Antonio Salah and Alexander-Arnold locked, and then looked around. Benrahma seemed fire on preseason.
Yeah.
So I got him locked pretty early. I got him when he was 0.7 percentage ownership.
Hmm.
And of course, Rafinha is a player that I love from last year. His stats are amazing. The eye test is amazing. So I had to go with him. At the moment, Lukaku and Ronaldo weren't available, so a
Yeah.
3-5-2 was the move for me, and that's why I changed it around game week 4 because those players came in.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think in terms of, I guess, fast forwarding a few weeks, because I think the key transfer, I guess, you made really is I guess, anticipating Sarr, which is, of course, once again, a nice kind of, I guess, interesting thing when you look at kind of managers and whether they have solid kind of decision making is kind of looking at players who have done poorly for a while and have maybe dropped off people's radars and actually picking them up, for the correct fixtures. And of course, you did wildcard in Sarr, which I think is probably, the clear differential in your game week 4 wildcard drafts. How did that kind of come about?
I had Sarr on my mind from the first game week, and but I couldn't squeeze him in.
Yeah.
So when I did my wildcard on game week 4, I thought that his fixtures were amazing. His value was great, so I went for him, just like that.
Fair enough. And I mean, obviously now that Sarr has actually hauled, in two subsequent weeks in a row, like, do you think he has some more kind of long-term interest in sitting in your team, or do you just
No,
kind
no,
of look at the fixtures and you think it does make
he's
sense?
go he's going out next game week or game week 9. He's going out for me.
Right.
I
Okay.
don't think
So
that Watford is so threatening.
yeah,
He is just carrying them for now.
yeah. I think just the lack of chances in general, being created by Watford is a big issue. And
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, what I like about him is just how direct he is in terms of he's not afraid to take a shot, even if it's a very poor chance. But he does it out of desperation. I think that's the issue when you look at Watford as a team. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very good FPL wise, but if he was a player on my team, on the team I support, I would be so frustrated to
Mm.
show shots out of desperation.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, I think generally I think that's the issue with Watford this season. And probably why I think it didn't make too much sense for players to, I guess, go into Dennis and King and assets like that, even though
Yeah.
they've actually hold relatively decently. But when we actually look at your team so far, I think you have an asset like Semedo in your team, and then obviously Trent having an injury, with Shaw also potentially maybe missing out on the weekend. Like, what do you feel about the general defensive situation for game week 7, and how do you kind of plan to alleviate that?
Well, okay. With Trent out and so possibly out, the logical move here would be to get a defender, but I've decided not to. I'm not
Hmm.
going to spend a free transfer on defense
Yeah.
because the only player I want in is Cancelo, and I want him in game week 8, not now. So even if I have to put on field 10 players instead of 11 this game week, I will do so because I've decided that I will either roll my transfer or get Jota out.
Yeah. Any kind of reasons why you want Jota out? Because I think that's a big kind of topic on players' minds, and whether or not you
Yeah,
move away from Jota and downgrade, basically.
Yeah, FPL wise, he's a great player. His stats are great. I love him as a player because I'm a Liverpool fan myself. But now he has a City game. Realistically, he may not score or get some extra points. And Firmino is back, as we told before. He's not called for Brazil duty. So it would be so frustrating if Jota started the City game, get 1 or 2 points, and then Watford and he doesn't start. That would be amazingly frustrating for me. So I don't want me in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, I think, you've spoken to me about, how interested you are in Gallagher, I suppose, or some other players like Rafinha, who, of course, we mentioned early on in the episode, given the fact that you actually had Rafinha as early as the start of the season. So is there any kind of interest in bringing Rafinha back, or is basically the issue once again the international fixtures with Game Week 8?
Yeah, my first choice, of course, was Rafinha, but I'm too afraid to go for him because of the Brazil duty. And I think Brazil plays on the 15th and then PL starts on the 16th.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how it's going to go. But if it wasn't for international break, I would totally go for Rafinha. To be
Okay.
honest, Gallagher, I think he's been doing amazing. I like him very much.
Yeah.
So probably I'll go for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gallagher is quite the complete FPL asset. Someone who takes set pieces, quite actually solid, actually creating those chances. He doesn't underhit his crosses too often. And then you look at the West Ham game, which is obviously his big kind of talisman game, where ultimately you can always see, even in games where they're very much behind, let's say on the ball in the Liverpool game, for example, I think he played much more like a center midfield, but still he makes runs like a true 10. And I think those kind of behind the box runs are very, very crucial to this kind of Crystal Palace side. But how do you think he maybe is affected by, let's say, whether they play Benteke or Edouard, for example?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't really got to watch every game in the season because I work on the weekends. But I've seen the stats, I've seen some heat maps. I think he would be a great asset no matter who plays in front of him.
Yeah.
Maybe with Edward, there is a bit of more movement. He
Mm-hmm.
goes in the area more. But with Benteke, he's more threatening when he takes set pieces. So either way would be good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the nice thing about Gallagher is he is ultimately an enabler. I know you said you wanted to go into Cancelo. Is there any kind of maybe concern that you have to also look at Trent? Let's say if he comes back, or let's say we come back from international break and Trent isn't fit and available to play. Are there kind of any plans to move away from Trent at all, or
No. I'm
yeah?
keeping Trent. I think he's one of the most essential players in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can find a player with 7.6, I think
Yeah.
he's right now, scoring 180 or whatever and above, and keeping a defense position, not midfield, not forward.
Yeah.
I think I will keep him forever.
I think just in terms of that as well, because I mean, given the fact that a lot of us are probably going to be keeping Trent and Salah, especially since we are early wildcarders, I guess some of the wildcarders of this week and the subsequent week might be looking at maybe dropping Trent for a while, maybe going for someone like Van Dijk and then upgrading elsewhere. But I do ultimately agree with you. I think it's like when you're looking at the midfielders this season, I think there's just not much interest in anyone who's above 6.5 right now, honestly, if I have to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to move Trent. You can find a solution to get points from your defense,
Mm-hmm.
even if he's benched for 1 or 2 game weeks. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I don't get why, except if you are wildcarding in game week 8 and bringing him back in, I don't get why you would take him out right now. I mean, he plays against City. Even if he was fit, realistically, he would get 2 points maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't know why would someone get him out.
Yeah. No, that's an
That's
interesting
my
point.
that's my opinion. Yeah. Okay.
No, I mean we like opinions. I think the counter opinion is that some people are saying, for example, let's say someone like Van Dijk in historical years has done extremely well on a points basis. But I think the main argument that some people are missing as well is that points per game is also a big argument too. When you look at Trent, I think there's a big disparity when Trent is actually fit and ready to play and what he brings to the table there. And clearly, I think in the last few seasons, we've always seen maybe small kind of injury periods with Trent, which is why the points don't really tally up. But I think when you look at points per game, bonus points as well, I mean, Trent is, I think, well
Yeah,
clear. Yeah.
he's a bonus magnet, of
Yeah,
course.
exactly.
And he's not that injured at all. I mean, last year he lost like 2 games, 3.
Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, why not? That's why we have Benz.
Yeah. In terms of just like the defense, I think a nice little thing that I read obviously from you is that you're not interested at all in terms of kind of doubling up on the kind of Chelsea defense. I think that's something I'm personally going to do. So probably going to disagree with you, but I know your general opinion is that you don't want to double up on any kind of team.
Yeah, but when we speak about Chelsea, the problem is that you don't really know who to trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, Rudiger seems nailed. Okay, that's why I got him in game week 4. But other than that, I wouldn't get near Alonso right now. I wouldn't get near Chilwell. I don't know who to trust. And to be honest, as I tweeted recently, I don't think that Chelsea's defense is that good. I mean, they are good. They're one of the best in the league, but they are not that good. I mean, if I had to double up on defense, I would go for City for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have taken in 6 game weeks 5 shots in the box.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah,
they have conceded like 2 big chances. 2. I mean, what? But yeah, they are amazing. Or if I went for Liverpool, I would go for Trent Alexander-Arnold and Tsimikas if he was nailed, because his value. You have 2 Liverpool defenders with like 12 million, 11 and a half, like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you pretty much offset the cost of Trent entirely with Tsimikas, but I mean, it was a nice little kind of stint we had with Tsimikas, and I think it was kind of nice for non-wildcard owners actually, because they benefited from Tsimikas, I think, 2 weeks back. But ultimately, I think, yeah, with the double up, my personal opinions is the reason why I like Chelsea, I think, isn't necessarily the fact that I think they're, the best defense in the league. I do agree. I think that the best defense in the league is City. And we've already seen it in terms of some of the games so far, especially that kind of Chelsea game where ultimately, I think part of the thing that makes the City defense so beautiful is, when City are playing their style and they're able to kind of effectuate it on you, you're not dealing with their defense whatsoever. You're not even being able to kind of live or go through your box. So it's just suffocating.
I think their best defensive play is their attack.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's kind of like, it reminds me of, last season when I think they had a poor start and you kind of saw, for example, only glimpses where they could contain the game for 20, 30 minutes and kind of keep that press, but then they would kind of falter in moments of the game. But I think, especially with maybe dropping even Gundogan potentially recently, I think the intensity that someone like Bernardo brings into the midfield is really, really nice. And obviously Cancelo playing left back, I kind of like his relationship with Grealish too. It just means that they can actually dominate the ball so much more compared to when, let's say, you have Sterling or Mahrez and they need to drive at a defender and they need to lose the ball and turn it over. Yeah.
And that's why I'm going for both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, Cancelo will be probably in game week 8 and then Grealish.
Yeah. That's the thing I was speaking about too. I really wanted to get Grealish and maybe just move Jota into him potentially because it's such a simple transfer from that kind of basis, and I have the spare funds. But at the same time, we have been discussing the fact that you're kind of staring at a very poor game for Jota, and ultimately, if there's a week to ever move Jota, it would be now. And I think, especially as you rightly mentioned with the Firmino thing, I think that's a huge kind of reason to move away from him. Just going back to the defense a bit, I mean, you mentioned that Cancelo, of course, is the one that you want to get. Is there any reason why you want to get Cancelo? Is there a slight fear as well with rotation, or are you just kind of comfortable in the fact that you have good enough bench to cover Cancelo and then not go for Diaz?
Yeah, of course, I'm afraid of the Pep Roulette, but I think that Cancelo makes it worse. He's so attacking, so creative player. and with Mendy out and Zinchenko, I think right now is injured.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason why not to go with Cancelo. Of course, he's gonna miss a game or two, but it's worth. It's worth.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think to be honest, I think he's probably underperformed in terms of goals and assists so far this season.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
totally fine. I think that's why you pick him up, because the fixtures are, to be honest, getting nicer for City. I think the one thing I'd say about Chelsea is that I guess another fact that I think makes the defense interesting is just the opponents that they're facing are very poor in terms of chance creation right now. So teams like Southampton, Norwich, I think only really Brentford are the most interesting team in terms of teams that I would expect to be able to build consistent chances for Chelsea. So whilst I agree with you, yeah, the City defense is clearly better. It's just those opponents. When you look at, for example, Southampton versus Wolves in a game where they dominate possession, but really created almost zero effective chances. Those are the kind of teams that I think Chelsea can quite easily keep a clean sheet versus. But I agree with you when you say, with exception to Rudiger, maybe the options are not so interesting. We saw, of course, Alonso get subbed off for Chilwell in 45 minutes. You can say it's a tactical sub or precautionary for a yellow card, but ultimately when a manager takes anyone off at 45 minutes, you know it's not for a good reason. It kind of reminds me of when Pep took Walker off in the Arsenal game, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just let's say looking at kind of game week 8 and 9 forwards, I think you have similar issues, maybe arguably in the midfield as well to me in terms of having Jota and Sarr. You know, do you anticipate taking hits to maybe change the midfield, and how do you also feel about Ben Rama, who sits alongside them in your midfield?
Well, to be honest, I don't consider taking hits at all.
Yeah.
I want to play differently this year. Last year I was such a knee jerk.
Yeah.
But now, no, I'm gonna take a bad game week instead of doing hits. And my plan is to move Jota around this game week.
Yeah.
Then maybe Sarr in game week 8 or so. I don't know which one of them will be. But then it's gonna be Sarr in game week 9. And then in game week 10, I'm gonna take out Saint Maximin for Tony.
Yeah. Same with me.
And in game week 11, it's Benrahma's time to move.
Are you looking at a target for Benrahma?
I want to see if now I bring in Gallagher, and then for Sarr I will bring in Grealish. Until game week 11, probably some midfielder will have been good enough to look at him. Or otherwise it would be Rafinha, or maybe Jota again. I don't know.
That's the worrying thing for me. I think I can probably see myself going back into Jota at one point. But I mean, I think the same issue in general is just the lack of Rafinha in our teams, really, and it's just so painful to know that it's just not I just don't think it's reasonable, as you say, to get him now, especially with the uncertainty. He's definitely probably going to miss most of the game. You know, when he comes back from international duty. So it only really makes sense to look at him then. And I think, especially if you've been holding Benrahma for a long time, you've probably profited from Benrahma. I do think we're not going to be profiting too much from him longer. So I think it is a worthwhile transfer. In terms of, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I've been trying to get Benrahma out like 2 or 3 game weeks now, and something comes up. I have to make another change.
Exactly.
And he's still there. So since he's still there, I'm looking at the fixtures. He's got Brentford home. Okay, he can have some assist or goal. Everton away isn't that scary.
Yeah.
Tottenham home is not scary at all. And maybe around game week 10 that he has Aston Villa away, and then Liverpool home, and then Wolves away and City away. That's where I should get him out, probably around game week 11.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I think the nice thing about Rafinha is that he is pretty much close to being a set and forget player, as long as you know he's going to play week to week, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of nice, very easy exit clause that we have as a Benrahma owner. But I think right now, you know, maybe when we look into the future, I think even Mbeumo could be interesting. I know you're going for Tony, and that's the risk, right? Doubling up on Brentford, but it does look so appetizing.
he was on my watch list before the season started. I
Yeah.
had him first on my watch list. I proposed to my friends to have him on their teams, but I couldn't squeeze him in.
Yeah. It's interesting because, of course, he's clearly an out of position player. I think next year we'll be seeing him as a striker, right? And
Yes,
ultimately,
yeah.
maybe he hasn't had the holes, but I think when you look at the underlying stats, it's very clear that when game week 10 hits, that's probably going to be prime time for Mbeumo. And I am wondering whether my midfield will basically completely change to something that looks like maybe Rafinha, Mbeumo, and Grealish potentially at that kind of point in time.
What I'm thinking about Mbeumo is that I could squeeze him in as a fifth midfielder, but in a 3-4-3 formation.
Yeah,
like a first sub.
Exactly, just constant rotation with someone like Gallagher, right?
Yeah, and I have enough value right now to do so, but let's see how it will look by game week 10.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that I guess I was looking at when we were looking at all the options in midfield is just simply if you can pick 2 or 3 midfielders who are in that price range, you can basically constantly rotate 2 out of 3 of them every week. I know a lot of people are actually looking at the Everton players, and I think if you're an Everton kind of midfield owner, you'll have to end up looking at that kind of situation because it's going to be clear that I think in some games Everton won't be able to get good results. I think, especially versus some of the stronger defenses, you can look at that kind of Aston Villa game as a good base point for how Everton right now would compete versus, I would say, a rather solid defense.
I don't trust Everton. I don't trust the players, neither Gray nor Townsend. Yeah, maybe they had one game or two. They were good, but I wouldn't get near them.
Yeah, I think Townsend is definitely. He almost looked like a 1-2 week punt, right? Because his value only comes from DCL and Richarlison being out, and then maybe you kind of seeing him as a differential shout for the penalty, right? And of course, he scored that penalty beat, but we know, I think, as according to Rafa's speech or kind of comments on penalty takers, that the first one is DCL and the second one should be Richarlison. So on that basis, I think Townsend really holds no value. In terms of Gray, I think the stats aren't there, but I do think the eye test is not bad. Just in terms of how easy he is, or how easy he finds it to kind of create separation from his defender and then crack a shot at goal. That's the only thing I like about him. But as I say, that would only really work versus a weaker defense, and that's the worrisome thing. I think that midfield still can't retain the ball versus a stronger side, and you're not going to get many chances where, if you look at, for example, kind of Gray's goal versus Burnley, that's just poor defending, really, as opposed to a player creating something magical,
And to be honest, it's a simple comparison in my head. Like, if Gallagher played against City, I would play him. If Gray was playing against, I don't know, let's say a good defensive team, let's say Wolves at home, I wouldn't play him. I would bench him.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's for me. I'm only interested in Gallagher and Rafinha right now.
Yeah. Ultimately, Everton have also gone through the 2 best possible fixtures in recent memory, Burnley and Norwich. So after that, it really kind of pales in comparison. They're pretty much middling average games, and especially with DCL and Richarlison coming back soon, you're just not going to have enough value, I think, from him. Whereas Gallagher clearly is, I think, quite a pivotal player. Sorry, go for it.
The interesting thing about Everton is that they actually have a good defense, even though they have conceded many goals. They have good defense. It's a bit unfair to them, but they were lucky enough to have more goals on the attack than they should.
Yeah, I think structurally the defense looks good, but I think individually we've seen too many mistakes from some players. I can basically remember a mistake from either Dean or Michael Keane every week until the last week. So that's kind of my genuine concern. I think Benitez can install like a good philosophy. I think there's some players who are quite good defensively as well, like Godfrey, which I quite like. But ultimately, they're not that appetizing a team. I think if you've had Decore, it's probably time to move away from him, even though it looks so positive.
And I wouldn't get near teams that I'm not excited by their managers. I mean, look at the English teams right now. They have the top coaches, Pep, Klopp, Tuchel, top level. I
Hmm.
mean, those three are the top three managers right now in the world. And then you look down the road and you see coaches like the Wolves, Lage is his name. I
Yeah.
don't know, who are just exciting new managers with exciting ideas. I would go there, but I wouldn't go for a player that plays for Rafa Benitez. I mean, I love him. I am a Liverpool fan, but no, not for me.
I'd maybe disagree a little bit in terms of the managers. I think, for example, we have some there's some other German managers that are quite interesting, and
Yeah, sure.
definitely, yeah. No, I'm just
But
kidding.
I call two. I call up and Tuchel are German. Of course,
Yeah,
Nagelsmann is very exciting.
yeah, for
Flick.
sure. I think,
What do you
yeah,
think
even sorry, go
about
on.
Spurs?
Spurs. I think they're. I think actually that team has the core to actually be a good side, but I think clearly they're horrendous. I think the last three games we've watched were, I mean, as you know, of course, like I wildcarded because I watched Watford versus Spurs and I needed to get Son out of my team. And even before the injury news, I had locked in the wild card so that I could also capitalize on some price rises. And yeah, my key decision was I needed to move out of my very like rigid 4-4-2, and I needed to go straight out of Son. Just because he wasn't getting any service. I mean, I could already tell that Kane was going to have a bad season. So for example, like on my cheat sheets, I'd always had Kane on as a differential pick or an avoid pick. And I think, yeah, when you watch them play, I think they've changed tactically every game. We started the first three games of the season playing a very sort of solid, kind of flat 4-3-3, very boring with Skip in the midfield, basically just ball retention, requiring Son and Lucas Moura to carry the ball all the way into attack. And by that time, they have no one to pass to and they're tired. Son also playing at striker at times. I mean, it's almost indefensible because when you watch Son, in the center forward position, he can't play back to goal. He doesn't like playing back to goal at all. And then the one glimpse was really that Chelsea, the first 45 minutes of that Chelsea game. You think that, okay, this team can play high pressing football. And I think, what Mourinho did last season was the thing that made the most sense. I think you either pick one of Dele Alli or Ndombele as a 10, and then you make a team around that because you realize that Ndombele is the best ball carrier in the team. It stops Kane from having to go deep. You keep, let's say, Son and Lucas Moura in basically high positions. And then I think the other alternative is maybe you try a back three because now you have three capable center backs, and you have Emerson, who should be a right wing back, and you have Reguilon, who clearly is a left wing back. And maybe you try that, but even that I don't think they have a good holding, like kind of double pivot to kind of play
Yeah.
like that, right? So Chelsea are probably the best three back in the world, and they can pretty much change their midfield between Kante, Jorginho, and Kovacic. Whereas with Spurs, the only midfielder I really like playing in the center mid position is Højbjerg, and I just don't think
I
they have the
I love
tools.
Ndombele, to be
I
honest.
love
As
Ndombele
a
as a 10, but not really as a double
Yeah,
pivot.
if I could get a Spurs player in Liverpool, I would get him.
Mm-hmm.
I love him as a player, and he would thrive under Klopp.
Yeah.
But I mean, what Spurs miss right now is a tactical approach that would be more interesting, more into modern football.
Yeah.
I can't see them defending on the center of the pitch with three up front. It's not done like that. Go watch a Pep video. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, he actually has, I think, the only win versus Pep this season in the league. But
Yeah.
that's the
But
thing.
what
Like, I think,
happens? It's football. Okay, you can win
no,
Pep.
of course, of course.
It's not that we are a better team than City.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, ultimately, City in that game were playing still, with Mahrez. I think that there's a little bit more of an upgrade when you go to arguably Jesus.
Yeah.
For me, and I think, of course, Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva, I think, also changed the dynamic of the midfield quite a bit. So
Yeah,
that's the
and it
interesting
was
thing.
the first league game for Grealish also.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and we know City, of course, ramp up during the season. The issue with
And
Spurs
they were
is
better
they've
at the
changed.
first half.
15 minutes. Yeah, I think Cancelo could have scored a goal easily. And that's what I mean when we say, Cancelo is also taking so many genuine shots on target. And I think that's quite healthy as well when we look at
Yeah.
Cancelo. But I think with Spurs, I think what that basically tells us is that there's no reason to go above an 8.0 mid. The only reason why you do that is probably to go for Son. I can't really imagine. I know people talk about KDB and Mane, but it's pretty much nonsensical. I think when you have Lukaku, Ronaldo, and you can pivot between those two. So I can't see myself between going beyond two premiums this season. I don't know how you feel about that personally.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
just two. Salah
exactly.
and someone else.
Yeah,
Maybe at some point it would be neither Lukaku nor Ronaldo, but KDB. I don't know.
yeah,
I think
could
that
be.
KDB can outscore them in many occasions, or
Yeah,
even Bruno can outscore them. I don't know.
that's the tricky thing. I think what I like about Bruno as a player is that I think he plays the role that he thinks he needs for the team to win the game. And I've seen him play positionally everywhere, sometimes just gap filling, and playing off the ball a lot more. And then sometimes, of course, just demanding the ball so that he can actually orchestrate play. And you'll see that sometimes when United are down, for example, in the Aston Villa game where he demands to get on the ball, he's going for one-touch passes that are actually very, very good. And then sometimes in games he's a little bit more quiet when he actually thinks that perhaps there's a system in place and he just needs to cover spatially for some specific players, especially since with Pogba and Greenwood in the team, you don't have true wingers, and he likes maybe pushing to the sides at times. And I think he's an exceptionally smart player, but I think that also means at times he's willing to sacrifice his FPL points. Last season,
Yeah,
I think when you didn't have that kind of focus point in terms of Ronaldo, I think that Aston Villa game is an interesting one because I think Ronaldo is playing a little bit more left wing than usual, than we've seen it in the United game so far. It kind of reminds me of positionally how he was playing for Real Madrid a little bit, basically like a false left winger, but they couldn't really get anything going in that game. And ultimately, it just comes down to the fact that United have a lack of midfield balance, basically.
yeah. Uh, it's a long story for United. I don't even know how to start with. I feel sorry for their fans to have those people around to make their planning.
Mm-hmm.
It's the recruitment team of Manchester United. Even though I hate them because I'm a Liverpool fan, I want to see them thrive, not in the Premier League in general, because
Yeah.
I admire Manchester United. They're a huge club. I want to be up there, But if I had Ed Woodward or the whole team in Liverpool, I would be so sad, so sad.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point, actually, because I mean, obviously, everyone at the start of the season was kind of looking at that kind of game week 15 plus or even game week 12 plus run for United, right? Which looks like, you know, the finest wine in terms of any kind of fixture run possible for a big team. But I guess my issue is like when we actually look towards those fixtures and we're trying to plan towards them, right? Especially since a lot of people are wildcarding now. I mean, arguably, you just have to make a solid plan to kind of reach those fixtures. But I mean, I think even when we reach there, I generally don't know what you do with the United team other than maybe go for Shaw and Ronaldo. I'm not that interested in getting another third piece. I know people are still having maybe Pogba and Greenwood on their radar. I don't know how you feel about that personally.
I got Greenwood out on my wild card, even
Yeah,
though he had returned every single week for the first 3 game weeks.
yeah,
I saw him and I thought, not anymore. You are not gonna continue
hmm,
returning. You are out.
yeah,
And it was a tough decision, but I think I got it right.
hmm, yeah. So I guess you're not probably interested like in the future in getting him back in your team, I guess.
No, Greenwood not at
Yeah,
all. The only assets of Manchester United that I would consider right now, maybe it would be Ronaldo,
yeah,
because of course, he's so much threatening to the
hmm,
opposition, and probably Sancho if he gets into the team system more,
okay,
because he will be the only one clear winger
hmm,
that he could provide to Ronaldo.
yeah. No, I mean that's true. To be honest, I think the nice little thing about him is that he's fallen in price. And but I still feel like he's kind of in that Havertz category where clearly I think he would be, let's say, like if he's in good form, instrumental to how the attack plays. But yeah, I guess there's just not that much interest, just due to the fact that I think we have such nice, well-priced kind of midfielders and defenders who are
Yeah, yeah.
still going to be effective.
But if United had like a mediocre manager, an
Yeah.
average manager,
Hmm.
Sancho would be great right now. But they don't have a manager at all, so he's not. Sorry for that, Manchester United fans, but you don't have a manager, and I'm
Yeah.
happy for that.
I mean, it's a tough thing because I think he obviously is backed by the board. So I guess I don't really expect too much to change on that front, unless basically the kind of miraculous Champions League exit happens. And of course, Ronaldo had saved him last night, so I don't think we'll see that. Just in terms of the kind of near term for Game Week 7, are there kind of any interesting maybe hidden gems or players that you think haven't been mentioned by players that are just generally on your radar, not necessarily for now, but just to kind of look at for in the future?
Uh, Hidden gems. I don't know. I mean, I would love Gallagher, as I told you before.
Yeah.
Maybe Zaha is interesting right now, but we know he's a big troll for FPL wise.
A little bit like Mope. Yeah.
Saka probably.
Mm-hmm.
Saka is interesting also. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've fixed the plan into my head, so I only look at 5 or 6 players right now.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. I think
Mm.
I think the this season will probably be rotating midfield the absolute most. I kind of agree with you. You don't really want to be transferring your defenders too often, and I think that's a general philosophy to have. But I think, given the fact that we probably have 3 elite defensive teams this year, I think there's enough value kind of between maybe moving fixtures to actually say that it's justifiable. Maybe 1 or 2 transfers between those sorts of players. I would be happy to play, for example, back 4 this season at points in time. I think my mistake, of course, when I started the season was going for Dean in my back 4. And I'll never do that again.
Yeah,
You'll
he's
hear
a
that.
big troll, man.
He's an absolute troll.
I was considering him too, but he's a troll.
For sure. Just going back, actually. So, I mean, you actually have Lukaku, right, in your team, and that's the one you actually kept in your wild card. So, obviously, a lot of future planning involved in that, right? Because I guess, we're kind of estimating the cost of the Ronaldo transfer and moving him out. And I think you pretty much benefited, I would say, from having that, so that you don't have to kind of take hits, and that's nice.
Yeah, but to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
my plan was, because I knew that most of the people were gonna wildcard in game week 8.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did in game week 4, I thought that I'm gonna take advantage of these game weeks until game week 8, but also have a team that will be similar to those wildcarding in game week 8. That's why I got Rudiger in. That's why I got Lukaku in. I regret it a bit because not so much because of the results, but because of how much more threatening Ronaldo looked against Lukaku. He was so much more threatening for the opposition teams. But after all, I'm very happy to have them early in, because they raised in value. Lukaku, when I captained him against Villa, scored twice. And it was the only game week that I captained him. So overall, I think it was a good wildcard for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, as everyone knows on the channel, I have my own general thoughts on my wildcard issues. But I think the interesting thing, of course, is now that we've seen that Ronaldo seems extremely threatening, and I guess there's less risk to kind of transfer him out now when he's playing versus this Everton defense. How do you actually feel about, let's say, maybe Lukaku versus Brentford as a fixture, for example? Now that we've actually seen Brentford play versus the Liverpool defense, and we've seen that they're basically fallable.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen Brentford being solid defensively, and I've seen Brentford being just running for a goal. I don't know what to expect. I would expect Brentford to score against Chelsea for sure.
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how it's gonna go.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And what are your kind of captaincies planned? I guess it's just Lukaku for Southampton, or is anything
Yeah, I'm
interesting in
gonna
your
go
mind?
for Lukaku. I
Mhm.
mean, I have him here since game week 4.
Yeah.
He deserves to get one captaincy again,
Hmm.
even though Chelsea doesn't seem so fluid and
Threatening. Yeah.
threatening.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I think ultimately the one thing about Chelsea is now with Mount and Conte out, that's a little bit of a worrisome sign in terms of how thin the midfield could be. We know Saul came on loan from Atletico Madrid, but I think anyone watching La Liga in the last 2 years would have told you he's regressed a bit as a player. I'm sure maybe Tuchel can restore him. I think Ruben Loftus-Cheek actually has been quite interesting off the
yeah,
bench. But I
he's
do
a
think
good player.
Chelsea will do well, over the course of these games. And whether or not maybe Lukaku plays all the games, do you think there's a potential that he could be dropped, or do you think I'm just kind of thinking too much here?
No, he could be dropped, but not right now. I
Hmm.
want to give him a go, and
Yeah,
Tuchel wants to give him a go.
yeah,
Uh, so I think not right now. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah,
uh, how are you gonna replace him with Werner? Come on.
exactly. Yeah,
Don't
I
get
think
me wrong, Werner, I think is a good player. He is not a goal scorer, and he is a meme maker. So yeah,
yeah, could be. I mean, I have to say, I think some of the kind of misses that Werner has made this over the last 2 years has been very astounding, especially just watching him in the
yeah,
Bundesliga. It just wasn't that apparent that he was so unconvincing, I guess, in front of goal. And I think once again, it just shows you how much of football is an emotional thing as well for some of these players, because you can spend your whole life, being a clinical striker, and it really takes maybe an injury or a specific kind of occasion for you to turn completely sour. It's kind of like the yips in golf, really. But yeah, I think Lukaku, I think, makes the most sense as the captaincy shout. And I think by game week 9, I think you absolutely must have him in your team. As a Ronaldo holder right now, I think I'm trying to extend Ronaldo to game week 9 so that I can maybe get Lukaku
yeah.
then. And
Mate,
yeah,
you should hold on to Ronaldo. I don't get why some people taking hits to get Ronaldo out and
absolutely
bring
not.
Lukaku
Yeah.
in. I don't
Hmm.
get it. He has looked so good, so good. Why would you take him out for Lukaku right now? I
Yeah,
mean, game week 9 is legit, but now why?
exactly. And I think, yeah, as we've been saying, you can probably make one or two transfers just in terms of one midfielder and one defender, before game week 9, and you're in a good position. I think most of the teams, if you
Exactly.
have a template structure, you're probably going to be completely fine. It's just really, if you wanted a Chelsea player this week, you probably got one this week. You probably get a City player the next week. And I think you're all good, really. So I think there's no kind of reason to worry if you did an early wild card about that kind of situation. When we actually look at maybe, the international break, is there anything alarming that you're worried about, or are you kind of just waiting and probably taking a patient approach?
Yeah, of course, injuries and COVID.
Yeah,
We all are afraid of that. Other than that, it's only Rafinha.
yeah.
Uh, I don't have something else on my mind right now.
Nah, I think
But
same with me.
of course, something will come up. Something will happen and ruin our game week again. So
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe we'll have
I
another
expect
kind
that.
of suspension of the game. That's quite interesting
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
But yeah, I think yeah, I mean, I think we've covered most of the points. Do you have anything kind of else to add in terms of your thoughts for game week 7 and ahead, or are you pretty much set with your plan to move away from Jota?
Yeah. Don't don't get rid of Ronaldo. Don't take hits to get rid of defenders, and
Yeah.
don't go double Chelsea.
Okay. Fair enough. I'll
That's
probably
it.
I'll agree with 2 out of 3 of those points, and I think that's
Okay,
totally
okay,
fair
that's
enough.
good.
All right. Well, anyways, thank you so much, Sergio, for coming on the episode. Um,
Thank you very much.